Okay, so we've finished up the nose, and I've been tweaking the face a little bit. Um, this is something you should do too. Now, I'm not going to really demonstrate because you'll have to just figure this out, but I've been trying to um, figure out the way the nose relates to the cheek here. I'm looking at reference images. The person I'm working on is quite young, so I don't want to have a tight nasolabial fold. It becomes much more apparent in older people. So the person you're working on, you may want to work in this fold a little bit more, but try and justify it by looking at some reference images and just looking at people, get an idea of what you should do. And I'm just going to continue to tweak the face to accommodate the tissue depth markers. And also I'm going to be looking at the actual bone underneath. And so when I don't have a tissue depth marker, just try to get things to follow. So you can see I push this back a little bit. I'm pushing it in. Now can't go in too far because I'm going to go through the bone. It'll show there, and obviously that's not right. But you want to have the flesh follow the underlying skeletal topology. So I'm just going to continue to work with this and tweak it to get something that looks right and matches the drawing that I did as much as I can, although um, I'm changing certain things as I go along, although I should probably pull some of this back a little bit. But you can sort of establish more clearly how these different parts relate to each other when you're doing it in 3D. When I drew it, I may have gotten some of this stuff a little bit wrong, because I couldn't really assess what the situation was like in 3D. So you can modify it as you go along while you model. Now, you may want to add a little more resolution into the face here. There's a fairly broad polygons here, so I could go in and add an edge loop here if I wanted to. So just go to Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loop. Now at this point, you're free to sort of figure it out as you go along um, on your own based on what you think it needs. If you need more resolution in certain areas, you've got enough experience. If you come to this point to begin to assess that on your own. Putting an edge loop in there, we can just add a little more resolution. It'll allow us to build in the filter a little more clearly later on. And even in the lip here from the front, now that we've got a little extra resolution, we can, um, you know, establish the shape a little more clearly. And another place that we need some more resolution is here in the cheek. I've got this fairly broad polygon and this fairly broad polygon and this whole column of polygon, these two paired polygon, these paired columns of polygons are fairly broad, so I may want to divide them up with some edge loops. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go into object mode. I'm actually going to delete the history on this. You can see my history is really building up over here because I keep playing with it. So just hit, I've got a shortcut for delete history. It's under edit, delete by type, history. Go to my recent commands, insert edge loop tool, and I'm going to put one in around here, not quite in the halfway point, because I'm going to delete one of these rows of edge loops, rows of edges here in a minute, just to make my distribution a little more even. Something like that. If I go into object mode, so I've got an extra edge loop in there. Now I'm going to delete this one here in the middle, although I don't necessarily have to. Let me just undo that. I'm going to insert an edge loop again. I'm just going to try and place them a little more evenly. This one a little bit closer. Something like that. I don't want to have resolution when I don't need it. So now maybe I'll select and go to under select up here. I can select contiguous edges and Oops, no, I don't want to select contiguous edges. Sorry, that was wrong. I want to go to select edge loop, not contiguous edges. So just double click on one of these. It should select all of those. Now I can go to edit mesh, delete edge vertex, and there I've got sort of a more even distribution of polygons here. Oh, that did something bizarre. Oh, yeah, sorry. Didn't mean to delete all those. You can see I accidentally still had these two edges selected and it deleted them and it ruined my edge loops in here. So I want to be very careful that I don't do that. Just deleting this one edge loop, this straight line here. Go to edit mesh, delete edge vertex. And there, that's a little cleaner. And now I can go in and start to just to tidy up. So at this stage, I'm not going to sit here and demonstrate all of these things to you. You can go in and just start to clean up your mesh and look at the skull, look at the direction of things, see if things are sticking out too much, try and pay attention to your tissue depth markers. Now, I remember I discussed earlier that I've got this one way in here. Obviously the face can't really be like that, but I may want to add a little more resolution to add a bit more of a sort of dimple in the cheek here. So maybe I'll insert another edge loop here. And then I can just start to continue to model it. So maybe push it in a little bit. Now one thing you may notice that when you add these extra edge loops, when they go around here, sometimes it makes the chin really sharp. So if you add edge loops in the cheek like that, make sure you go in and touch up your chin and under your chin and just fix these things up a little bit as you go. Otherwise, you can have some funny results if you don't notice these things as you're building them. Just going to push these in a tiny bit to get the shape of the trachea in there a little. You can see I've got a funny shape here for a place for the ear. Oops. Pull that out a little bit. All I did for this was, there used to be 4 squares here, and let me just delete these faces. I just made some room for the ear. And it'll be another tutorial about the ear, but I don't think I'm going to have you necessarily model it for this. So if I just deleted those, and then just do the old append polygon tool. Just clicking on these edges as I go along, turn, and then I just selected this and extruded. Just went to extrude and then went to scale mode and just pulled it in to get that kind of, just a place for the ear and some extra resolution to build the ear out. I may want to define the jawline a little bit here more, so I would go to object mode, insert another edge loop around here, and this will allow me to define the edge of the jaw a little more, and go to vertex mode. Maybe just pull some, turn off my yes. This will allow me to push the back of the jaw back a little bit. So there's my gonion marker there. Excuse me. So I could select some of these points behind that now and push them back a bit. That one was sticking out in a funny way. just to sculpt in the shape behind the jaw there a little bit more. Pull that out a little bit. So we're very roughly working the shape of the masseter muscle here. It's a big bulky muscle, and then that allows us to I can make this little dimple to sort of accommodate what the skull is showing me in terms of being recessed in the cheek area here a little bit. If I go into 3 mode so you can see, trying to define that shape a little bit more. So that's coming together. Now just look at it from different views to make sure it doesn't look too funny. One problem I have to admit I'm having with this is that when I'm modeling this, and actually when I model anybody, I tend to make them look a little bit old because I start to add these extra edge loops in, and they inadvertently make these sort of wrinkles and things like that. So you have to be very careful while you're working to just go in and assess things. One trick I'll say before I end this tutorial, right now we're working with this shaded, kind of gray shaded with no specular highlights on the head. If you want to change this to another material with more of a specular highlight that will allow you to see any little ridges and valleys you inadvertently put in here, at this point you can assign a new material to this. So with this geometry selected, I'm going to go to assign new material. So sorry, oh, that's bizarre. Select the object, right click, go down to assign new material to blend. And a blend is just the shader that has a specular highlight. So now if I move around, so you can see when I look at the face down here with the specular highlight, it shows me that there's a bit of a little lump in there that I may want to get rid of because this is a younger person. I don't really want to emphasize that too much. So I'm just going to pull these out. So this is just the process of tweaking, and this is where the face can be really refined into something good. And if you have all the structure in there, as you should, then doing this kind of modeling is quite easy because everything flows as it should. When you make changes, the changes flow along the face as if it were a real face. One thing I may want to do, this looks a little loose to me, take the corner of the mouth and tighten it up, push it in, that's a little bizarre looking. Because if you look at some pictures of the face, you see that this lower edge tends to roll up and into the lip here. So you may want to try and capture that sort of feeling a little more. These are getting into minutia now, but these are the things that will sort of sell the face as being realistic. Okay, so I'll leave it to you to go in and tweak like crazy. The next thing we're going to do is create the other half of the face now, assuming that you've finished everything and you got it all matching the underlying skeletal structure and the tissue depth markers. I will do a demo for the ear tutorial, for the ear, and whether we have time to do that or not, I'm still not sure. But we can move on to reflecting the head and building up the final face. Okay, see you then.